So hi everybody and welcome to this evening's webinar for the National Varroa Transition to Management. I'm your host this evening. My name's Bianca Jiggins from the Australian Honeybee Industry Council, or ARBIC, which is the peak national representative body for the honeybee industry. If we can skip to the first slide. As I said, ARBIC's hosting the webinar and we are a not-for-profit representative body. We survive solely on the generous donations from beekeepers through our Friends of ARBIC program. If we don't receive money from levies, we're really relying on the industry and Friends of ARBIC to support us. So if you're not a friend of ARBIC, we encourage you to jump onto the website at honeybee.org.au and become a friend today. Tonight, we are anticipating over 600 people online. As you can appreciate, we will not be able to take questions from the floor. However, we do encourage you to ask your questions via the Q&A function, and our team will direct you at the end of the session to have them answered. We may not be able to answer all of the questions this evening, so we'll take them away and we'll make sure that they're used to form ARBIC and the T2M communications in the future. This webinar is being recorded and will be published online, so it's important to remember that the information presented tonight is current as at the 30th of April 2024. If you're watching this recording as a webinar later on, please make sure you check the websites for up-to-date information. So welcome, I'm your host, and the topics today that we're going to be covering is three main presentations. The first one being a transition to management overview from Tamara Prentice, the National T2M Coordinator working for New South Wales DPI. The Varroa Education and Training overview from Julie White, Acting Training Coordinator, New South Wales DPI. And then a Varroa Development Officer overview from myself, Bianca Jiggins. We'll follow up and hopefully we'll stick to time to have a Q&A session around 8 p.m. and finalise the evening at about 8:30. So we'll kick over to the first presentation from Tamara Prentice, the National Varroa Mite Coordinator.
Hi. I'll just wait for my presentation to come up. Is it up?
I think it's loading. We'll just be patient. We're switching screens, so we're just waiting for our magician in the background.
Thanks, Jo. And thanks, Bianca. As Bianca mentioned, my name's Tamara Prentice, and I'm acting in the National Varroa Mite Transition to Management Coordinator role. I'm hoping that some of you might have had a bit of a background in the program, but this slide's just got a few of the key dot points around the program, as well as setting out that we're going to look at the next look more closely at the 4 objectives under the plan in the next few slides. So the Transition to Management Plan was endorsed by the National Management Group on the 9th of February 2024. The Transition to Management Plan establishes a program of work which includes staff, some of whom you'll meet tonight. The plan has a 12-month timeframe. We're already 2 months into that. So we've got about 10 months left to go, and there's a lot of work in front of us, which you'll see. Within the plan, there are a group of people called Varroa Development Officers, and Bianca will give a lot more detail about them tonight, but they're able to be employed over a 24-month period, which will be really helpful as Varroa starts to incur in other states. The plan itself has a budget of $154 million, $100 million being cost shareable between government and some other industry groups. As I mentioned, it has 4 objectives, which we'll touch on now. So who are we? So as Bianca mentioned, a large proportion of the staff resources that are servicing the national program sit within New South Wales DPI. These roles, however, to be clear, they service all the jurisdictions. The VDO roles and the trainers that you can see in the bottom half of bottom right-hand side of this screen, they're an exception, and each state and territory jurisdiction will employ their own trainers and their own extension and engagement officers, or VDOs. We're also currently working on a national website which will host the most up-to-date Varroa information so that it seems less like a DPI document and more of a national documentation. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that we've got public information officers. So this public information team, they'll organise and promote events as well as stakeholder engagement, and they'll do this on a national basis. So some of the events that we've started in New South Wales and will roll out across the nation include presenting at beekeeping club meetings, doing webinars such as the one that we're in today, the promotion of training and workshop events, as well as disseminating that Varroa mite content as we start to develop it nationally and across each jurisdiction. The next team you'll see there are the technical coordination team. This team's responsible for data management, data analysis and reporting. It's required to support the program to make sure that we're doing what we intend to do and to map where Varroa is up to and where it's spreading. The next team on the bottom left is logistics support. So this team support the movement of people and equipment to facilitate fieldwork, training, workshops and event management. And then the bottom right, finance support. So that's critical. Everyone knows what finances are and we rely heavily on that team. You'll also see that there's a National Pollination Industries Coordinator. So this plan's not only about the honeybee industry, but it's about those pollination industries which are also reliant upon the honeybee population. As we know, as Varroa starts to impact on the wild populations, we'll see those wild honeybee populations decline. And so the pollination industries are going to feel the pinch as well. Up the top, you'll see that in the red box, the National Varroa Mite Coordination Group. So this group's responsible for the monitoring and evaluating of the plan activities, making sure that the team are doing the right thing and meeting the objectives that have been set out in the plan and that we're doing it within budget. So let's hope we perform. Okay, so the objectives of the plan. So the first objective of the plan is actually the completion of the V3 activities. So V3 was the program of work when we were in the eradication phase. We had a bit of tie-up work to do. So we've just tidied up a few things such as the tracing and surveillance, compliance, the voluntary euthanasia program and activities, as well as the wild European honeybee baiting program. The other thing that's really important to call out, and this is probably a particular call out for the New South Wales beekeepers, is that there were biosecurity zones in New South Wales, but today they've now been lifted. So the control order that lifted those biosecurity zones recognises that Varroa is now considered endemic and that we can't stop it from spreading. It's actually spread outside of those zones already. This doesn't mean, however, that there is just a free-for-all. There's still the general biosecurity duty, which all beekeepers in New South Wales must continue to manage Varroa so that it does not become an issue with their own operation or with the neighbours. And it also promotes best management standard practices, which hopefully we can tell you a bit more about through our education and engagement programs. The other thing is actually that Varroa mite is still notifiable. So it's notifiable in New South Wales. It also remains notifiable across all of the states and territories. So anyone that comes across Varroa has to report it. And this is to support the ongoing international trade in live bees, and particularly for those areas that are not yet subject to Varroa. Then there's Objective 2. So Objective 2 is around building the industry resilience and capacity, and this one focuses on the beekeeping industry. So the training and extension will be spoken about later, but it includes both formal and informal training opportunities, as well as a variety of face-to-face and online courses. There's also the Varroa development officers who are able to help beekeepers and the clubs personally. This is a major component of this plan. The second activity in Objective 2 is about the ARBIC Code of Practice and the Biosecurity Manual being updated to recognise that we now do have Varroa and we need what the best management practices are for managing that. The third objective is around facilitating a commercial supply of Varroa control products. Sorry, the third activity, my bad, Joe. So you'll note that some of those are currently already available and others are still in the process of being approved by AVPMA. The process for approval through the AVPMA is slow and the commercial quantities of treatments are very much still in the building phase. There's also supply chains being developed and over time we expect the diversity and range of these products will grow. This is a key reason that we're trying to slow the spread of Varroa across the nation as much as possible. The fourth activity in this objective is to support Varroa-related diagnostics. So this activity is around sharing the lessons from New South Wales with the rest of the nation. It's teaching entomologists what to look for and technical specialists what learnings we've had in New South Wales over the past period of the response. It also includes a budget to support sample processing nationally. It's proposing to encourage sample submission to help boost monitoring and reporting. Testing around the incursion zone in New South Wales identified viruses that we didn't even know were in Australia. We're hoping that the submission of further samples will help us better understand and baseline where those viruses are, particularly before Varroa hits other jurisdictions, so we can understand some of the complexities that Varroa has brought to us as a nation. Then there's objective 3. Slowing the spread. So I mentioned slowing the spread is necessary, and we're really trying to slow it as much as possible to give the rest of the nation and the rest of New South Wales as much time to prepare as we possibly can. So the first activity under objective 3 is regulating to slow the spread. It includes all the national jurisdictions looking at controls and consistent options for border control movements. It's looking at things like all of, bees themselves, but also hives, queens, and any other risk vectors of Varroa. So the decisions about border controls will sit with each jurisdiction, but hopefully will be informed by the Subcommittee for Market Access, Risk and Trade. Compliance and enforcement is the second activity. And at the moment, we expect that the efforts around compliance and enforcement will be focused on beekeepers who didn't do their reported and required surveillance in New South Wales, and in Queensland, Victoria and South Australia on interstate movement from New South Wales, which is where most of the risk lies for this industry at the moment. In relation to monitoring the impacts of Varroa across Australia, the Varroa development officers that Bianca will talk about later, they'll engage with beekeepers and they're going to be seeking assistance with voluntary monitoring and surveillance. This will help us understand if we're achieving the aim of slowing the spread, as well as inform ongoing improvements to the best management practice guides, which will be necessary to help us meet our long-term objectives. So just a quick plug here, if I can, while I've got everybody's attention, and that's please consider helping us by reporting the presence or the absence of Varroa, and also if you've got it, the loads and hive health when you can. Even if you don't find anything, if you get a chance to report that, it helps us know where Varroa is not, which is a key piece that's missing in the puzzle at the moment for us. So then objective 4. So objective 4 is about supporting future-ready industries, and this is about the bee industry as much as the pollination industries as well. It's helping all of those industries prepare for a life where the bee populations have been impacted by Varroa. So establishing an Australian colony loss survey. So colony loss, or COLOS, is a global initiative with surveys on colony loss occurring in 30 countries. Each country surveys a sample of beekeepers using a standardised survey. So we're proposing to introduce one in Australia, which would meet that global standard, but also look at some of the local questions that we need to ask to understand how much colony loss and what the impacts of Varroa are in an Australian context. Then there's a national Varroa mite data management system. So this project is subject to further assessment, but if approved, it will enable centralisation of hive health data to inform best management practice improvements. This project is run by the technical group, which I mentioned earlier, who also do a heat map. You'll see the heat map on the right-hand side of this slide, and it shows where we've had reports of Varroa in New South Wales so far. It's proposed that this map will become national in the very near future if we can start using some of the data from other jurisdictions where we're getting negative reports at the moment, which, as I mentioned earlier, is really critical for us. The next activity is upskilling queen bee breeders. So this is a project to look at options to produce queens with improved Varroa resistance, but at scale. So the scale that we're going to need these produced at is something that we probably haven't faced before in our industry. So it will be really important for us to be able to look at options there. And then pollination options in a post-Varroa mite world. So this activity will look at options for pollination services as Varroa spreads. It will do a review of existing research and development projects, as well as look at other opportunities like flies, bumblebees, potentially native bees, or improved plant genetics or mechanical pollination options. Thank you, Jo. So That's it in terms of the plan objectives. As you can see, we'll have a lot to do over the next 10 months. And I really, as I mentioned, appreciate the opportunity to work with you all. And really, if you could do some reporting, that'd be fabulous. Thank you.
I think it's a huge body of work, and kudos to you to put that together, to give the detail that's provided. I'd like to hand over to our next speaker, Julie White, the National Education Coordinator from the New South Wales DPI. Take it away, Julie.
Hello, everybody, and nice to, well, we can't see you all, so that's a bit of a weird experience for us, but we know you're out there somewhere. So Julie White, and I'm just going to run you through the education and training component of the plan, which I'm currently looking after. So the first aim of the education and training, of course, is to upskill beekeepers nationally. So it does have a national approach, and we're looking to target a couple of things, particularly in that upskilling. So that is to monitor and detect and manage varroa mite for beekeepers across Australia, to understand and meet their responsibilities, and to help introduce new practices into beekeeping businesses to manage varroa mite. And I think all of us would agree that education's got a really important role here. We're all learning new things all the time. I'm standing here in front of a green screen doing this presentation to you for the first time. So this is what we're asking of the beekeeping industry, and this program is here and designed to help you do that, to learn those new things, to understand what this means for you, and be able to address that in the way that you manage your hives. So what are we aiming to do with this program? And I think these are probably some of the key points here. One is that we're looking for nationally consistent information and training being given to beekeepers and the associated industries across Australia. So that's a really important first step, is to have the consistency in the messaging that is going out to beekeepers, so that it's clear and it's delivered in the Australian context. The second is that information is reliable and accurate, and that relies on the input of technical experts in this area, and that's being incorporated into the development and the review process of the materials that we will be delivering through this program. So that reliable and accurate is really important in terms of the information that you take and decide to do something with. Knowing that it's reliable and accurate is incredibly important in all of the information that you use in your business. So our plan is to do this in multiple ways, because we know as well that people like to access information in different ways. So we do have face-to-face training. We have started to deliver that in New South Wales, and that will be rolled out nationally. But along with that, there will be also online training, because that enables people to access that at a time that suits them and a place that suits them. So they don't have to go somewhere specific to get that information. They can do that from wherever they might be. So our aim is to deliver this as flexibly as we can, so that everybody can access what they need to know. And that type of information that will be, and training that we'll be doing through this, will be a variety of things. So we'll have short focused information up to a full day workshop. So that means that we can adapt that content as we go along as well, to say, this is the new issue that we're seeing. People are struggling to get their heads around, so we can do something short and focused on that. And that will complement all of the other training that is delivered through this. But the main point here is that we're giving beekeepers the option as to how they access the information that they need to move into this management of Varroa. So what is being developed? A one-day face-to-face course that will be delivered nationally, which is an introductory to how to manage Varroa in your hives. We will have online courses that go with that are both introductory and in-depth, as I mentioned before. So it's these are all designed to be a suite and go together and complement each other. But we'll have a collection of other resources as well. So videos, I mean, who doesn't like to go to YouTube to find out how to do different things? All sorts of strange things you can go to find out how to do pasta making, for example. So we will have videos, we'll have fact sheets, webinars on identified priority topics. So this means that we will be putting together a whole collection of things that you can access to help make these decisions in the next, over this next 12-month period. These will also be available after that 12-month period as well. So our aim here is to have a variety of ways to learn what you need to know, that we're explaining things, showing how to do things, and also describing some of the science for those people that want to go into more in depth into the topic. So to step us through a little bit the face-to-face training and how that's being developed and how that's being delivered. So there's a few steps in this. The first step is that we have developed a training product that is being delivered in New South Wales, but that now needs to be reviewed nationally, because each state will have its own emphasis that it wants to put on that, and some of its own regulations as well that we need to incorporate into that. So we need to have that national review of the training program, which is due to start shortly, followed by the national recruitment of trainers, because we need a whole body of trainers to go out and to deliver this training for us. So there will be an expression of interest process that enables people to come forward who want to be part of this and who have the right background and experience to do that. And they will be a trained group of people in each state who can then continue after the program to deliver that important training to beekeepers and the pollination industries. So the phase after identifying our trainers is to then bring them up to speed. So to do the Train the Trainer program, which is crucial to that part about national consistency. So that program takes them through the content in depth, gets them to learn about how to be good at it as in delivering content, so that you walk away from these workshops really having had a good experience and understanding what you need to understand, or at least starting your understanding process. So the delivery of the Train the Trainer program is next. Then after that, or in parallel with that, we will be looking at scheduling the training across each state, so that when these things are finished, we are ready to start delivery as soon as possible after that. So that will be through a consultation process with the state agency and the beekeeping associations, and that has started in some states and will continue throughout May, so that we have a reasonable idea of the schedule for the rest of the country. And then obviously after that, we deliver the training. So that's the face-to-face component of the training. What have we done so far? So this is generally a fair level of interest to people. So what have we done so far? Our focus has been New South Wales to start with, and for obvious reasons, there was an urgency here to have the training delivered. So our first focus was the face-to-face training and the delivery of that in New South Wales. So the training has been developed and tested here, and that's fantastic, because it means now with the national rollout, a lot of the preliminary work has been done, meaning that we can fast track this for the delivery for the rest of Australia. So we went through a long process to identify what we thought the key topics were that needed to be covered in that face-to-face training, and then to test that with the bee industry to see were we on the right track, and to get that technical feedback and expertise input into that training as well. So that has happened. And as I mentioned before, that will now happen nationally, so that each state has a chance to have input into that training. So in New South Wales, we've identified our 15 contract trainers, and they have been onboarded, and they have completed the Train the Trainer program. So they have commenced the delivery of the workshops. And when I did this, there was 18. We've had 2 more this week, so we're now up to 20. And so we're up to around maybe well over 1,000 beekeepers in New South Wales have now attended a workshop this year. So all of that work that we've done in testing things here in New South Wales and getting going with that training will now feed into what we do for the rest of Australia. So our contract trainers have largely been delivering that training that has been happening with a very concentrated effort in April in New South Wales, and we will have a planning month of May and resume that training in June is what we're aiming to do for New South Wales. And at the same time, be commencing that process for the rest of the states. So just to give you an idea of what's covered in the workshop, this is the program. So we start off with looking at varroa biology and the symptoms, and then move on to monitoring, which is looking at the different monitoring options so you can work out which one's going to be most appropriate for your situation. And part of that as well is then the determining the mite load and the threshold. So we cover that as well, which is an important concept. We then move into the control options. We start that off with integrated pest management. That's what IPM stands for, if anyone's irritated by that abbreviation. It stands for integrated pest management. And that works us through the cultural, mechanical, chemical methods of control options, which is a really important part of the day, because that's the part where often it's the newest things for people to be understanding. So we work our way through that, and then we finish the day with going over the importance of record keeping. After each of those sessions, so before morning tea, before lunch, before afternoon tea, we have a question and answer session so that you can answer questions about the content you've just heard. But we also have another session at the end of the day, because the aim is for the people that have come to the face-to-face workshops to leave having had their key questions answered. And to help with that, the Varroa development officers that Bianca will talk about are often present at those workshops. And so they're along with the trainers to help answer questions on the spot. So that's the program as it is at the moment. That obviously we're going to have that review process, so there could be changes to that, but that's the program as it is at the moment. So what is the next part of this rollout? So this is for the other states. So May is going to be a focus on the review of the training and the expression of interest for so identifying those contract trainers in each state. We then are ready. So once those things are done, we're ready to move into the train the trainer part of the program, and at the same time doing that scheduling so that when the trainer has been delivered, they're basically ready to go out and deliver, because so the training has been scheduled. And then there's the delivery over the next 9 months in each state. So that's the schedule as it stands at the moment. It's tight. We've got a lot to do in a short amount of time, but the work that we've already done in developing these products is going to really help in this context now. So that's the face-to-face training, but of course there are other resources as well. So they will be developed and released as we go as well, so that we're trying to address key issues as they arise and keep that information need being met, so that you have this nationally consistent, reliable and accurate source of information to go to for information about managing Varroa in the Australian context. So that's me. Thank you, everybody, and might see you at a workshop. Thanks, Bianca.
So,
oh, you're right. Just start again.
Thank you, Julie. That was a really informative presentation. I think we've got stacks of queries coming to you after my presentation in that Q&A that's coming up. I'm just going to go through to my next part of my presentation. So tonight I aim to share another important piece of the T2M program, the Varroa Development Officers. Being managed by myself as the National Varroa Mite Coordinator at ARBIC, we're set to function within the jurisdictions across Australia under the T2M structure. So firstly, it's important to note that Varroa is slowly spreading across the landscape. So I have some images to show representing the heat map of the data that's reported across New South Wales so far. As the mite spreads, we can use this heat map detail as a way to know where the mite is and it isn't, according to beekeeper reporting. The first image here is the 31st of October, a few weeks just after the transition to management occurred. A month or so on 30th of November, you can see slight changes to the darkness of the map and the slight increases to the overall area being reported. The darkness of the map indicates levels of infestation. In February, there are some noticeable changes, including outliers in the Blue Mountains and the Scone region of the Hunter Valley, and increases to the central west, to the south and western areas of Sydney, and an expansion from the Narna Glen region. As of today, the 30th of April, changes to the Ballina region in the north of the state and an expansion of Taree and Sydney regions can be seen. And as a reportable honeybee pest, it remains incredibly important for beekeepers to begin or to continue monitoring for and reporting Varroa. This map is only as useful as the information that beekeepers are providing. So it's a tiny but highly dangerous Varroa destructor mite. It's a very destructive enemy of the Western honeybee, Apis mellifera. You can see the Varroa mite reproduction is dependent upon honeybee brood, explicitly parasitising the honeybee at every life stage. The mites remain in the cell with the developing worker brood for up to 12 days and 14 days with drone brood. Varroa destructor affects bees by feeding on fat body tissue, inducing foraging at a younger age, negatively impacting foraging behaviours, reducing the return of foragers to the hive, decreasing bee body weight, and reducing the lifespan of both worker bees and drones, with also spreading viruses. Varroa mites have optimally adapted their feeding and their reproduction to the beehive environment, and it enables parasite infestation to at least double every 3 to 4 weeks during the honeybee breeding season. Assuming a starting population of around 50 mites, it can grow to around 3,200 mites from spring to the end of summer. This is enough to kill even a strong honeybee colony of around 40,000 bees over winter. It's important to note that this graph represents a temperate climate simulation where many areas across our country will not experience the autumn and winter brood breaks, and this poses a unique management challenge to the beekeeping industry. So Varroa destructor affects colonies. An individual mite will not kill the bee, but the colony will suffer immense overall stress and eventually collapse and die. A colony in a mite-infested beehive will typically collapse within 2 years if there's no human intervention. Varroa can have differing effects on colonies depending on the time of the year, environmental conditions, phase of the brood cycle, and existing pests and diseases. It's very important as an industry that beekeepers begin to adapt their practices and learn new skills to improve their knowledge of colony management, with Varroa slowly spreading across our landscape. Varroa brings additional challenges to beekeepers across many levels, from time management, economics, and the growing number of treatment methods that will become relevant to Australian beekeeping. It can be very confronting and challenging that we as beekeepers are now forced to adopt these new practices into our enterprise, or our colonies will not survive. Be ready to embrace these activities of the T2M as an opportunity to receive free extension and engagement to lift our industry's capacity. So what is a Varroa Development Officer? A VDO is a group of beekeepers and industry professionals employed across Australia to support beekeepers during this T2M. They're here for recreational and commercial beekeepers. They are focused on Varroa mite management and practical skill development. What do they do for our industry? So VDOs are set to mimic the roles of the bee biosecurity officers across Australia. We're upsizing it. So VDOs are beekeepers support networks, a non-judgmental, hands-on team within each jurisdiction. They'll be engaging with beekeepers to assist in monitoring for Varroa, for hive health assessments, for Varroa treatment and management techniques. So VDOs will specifically assist to understand beekeepers' individual time management, preparedness and infestation monitoring, colony of phase and brood assessments, environmental considerations, the cost and the efficiency evaluations for treatments, and also planning for beekeepers. So we really want to encourage that alcohol soapy water wash or sugar shake is the clinical assessment critical to Varroa management. The outcome of your monitoring will assist you as a beekeeper to decide what is the most effective intervention that you can take. So the number of VDOs across each state has been allocated based on the size of that beekeeping industry. ARBIC has been working together with existing biosecurity and apiary teams across Australia within the jurisdictions. The New South Wales and ACT VDOs commenced in March, and they're already busy engaging with beekeepers. We need to move forward as an industry because we will learn how to manage Varroa mites and will be resilient. Each of the other states are at varying levels of progressing VDO recruitment. Across New South Wales, we've got several beekeepers already engaging with VDOs, and we're really looking forward to having Victoria, Tasmania, South Australia, WA, Northern Territory, and of course Queensland on board very soon. And when that information is available, we'll be sharing it across the jurisdictions and across ARBIC's channels. So for more information, please request contact from BDOs by calling the 1-800 number. You can also reach out to myself at ARBIC. And also, just importantly, ARBIC's been working on a collaboration with AgriFutures Australia to provide the extension of a resilient beekeeping in the face of varroa project. So this project is separate to the T2M, but it's been provided as a suite of resources with international interviews from experts on varroa management. You can check that out on our website for more information. But yeah, look, it's important that kind of concludes our presentations. So we'll shift across over to the question time, and I'll just prepare to go straight to Julie, because these are the questions that I had written down already. So Julie, we had some queries around people who missed workshops in their area. Could you just cover, I don't know if you specifically addressed it, but if you could cover some of the risks if people do miss out, keeping an eye out on these workshops as they're rolling around.
Yeah, thanks, Bianca. So that's definitely the first thing. Keep an eye out for if it's someone in New South Wales, obviously we've started, but there's more to come. The other states, keep your eye out for that information. It'll come out through various channels. So we're trying to make sure that we get that out to everyone knows what's going on where. So just keep your eye out on that. We do also have an expression of interest form that is live that you can go in and put your details in there, and we'll let you know when there's training coming in your area. So that would answer that as well. But the idea of having the online as well as the face-to-face is that if you do miss out on the face-to-face, you can actually get that same information by accessing it online through the online course. And also this webinar series will continue on, and we'll address a lot of those really key topics that are also covered in the workshop. So you'll have lots of different ways that you can access information.
Excellent. And while I've got you, could you talk a little bit about how we're addressing as a national program to make sure that the information in the webinar, in the workshops is relevant to each state and the conditions of each of those states? So you've reached out to jurisdictions?
Yes, sure. Yes. So hopefully starting, if not next week, the week after, each state will be given the opportunity to review that training and to contextualise it for their state. So we realise that's really important because each state's in a different position and has lots of different factors. But yes, so definitely each state will have an opportunity to have input into that training. And in fact, the beekeeper associations as well will be contacted to seek your input into what they think are the key topics and how they should be delivered and addressed. They're going out progressively and in different ways as well. So we're definitely trying to get that input from both the agencies and the industry.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you. I'm sure that's covered a couple of the queries that we've got around education. I'll just keep scrolling. Tamara, I'd like to cross to you to cover a query that's been put together. How is slowing the spread going to be implemented without badly affecting pollination services? We have addressed it in the chat, but I just wanted to bring that up so that it could be a lot of people with that pollination question about borders and slowing the spread and how that works. What's the balance?
It's a great question, and it's really one that is being considered by each of the jurisdictions separately at the moment, as well as that SMART committee on market access. So we don't want to sterilise, we don't want to stop pollination. We understand pollination is critical, and I understand that was the decision that was made last year to enable pollination to proceed. But we do want to slow the spread as much as possible. So we would really encourage people that are in areas where there is known varroa and people across New South Wales to do testing before you move your hives for pollination services, and follow the best management practices of treating as soon as you exceed those known mite loads to try and keep any varroa spread in those pollination regions to a minimum as people move their hives. Look, we think that's probably going to be the best balance to enable all of the industries to continue to be prosperous while trying to slow the spread as much as possible.
Fantastic. And while you're in the hot seat, could you address, there is a query around expiration of beehive ID numbers in New South Wales. I can come back to you if you like. I can cover another query that I can answer. There, it is in the chat, but I thought I'd just put that one across. Could be something that's kind of considered by a few people. With loss of hives, they might re-register now that they might be going back into beekeeping again. So I wanted to address one of the queries, which was around the viruses that were mentioned by Tamara. The viruses that exist in Australia have been extensively studied. They've been across, I guess, studied through lots of different CSIRO have done a fair bit of information around virus testing. I'm just going to find the information that's been forwarded. So currently, Australian viruses that exist for both honeybees and that are risky, they're not all risky to be vectored by Varroa. We do have existing in Australia sac-brood virus, black queen cell virus, Kashmir bee virus, Israeli acute paralysis virus, chronic bee paralysis virus, Lake Sinai virus 1, Lake Sinai virus 2. These are detected in Australia between 2 different studies, and they're not all affected by the vectoring of Varroa. So importantly, deformed wing virus hasn't been identified in Australia, and there is a process through the response and our general biosecurity duty to follow up on any reports of deformed wing. So it's important just to be aware of those, but I think we might be able to address some of those virus concerns, I guess, and more information in a following webinar. It's probably not enough time to go into detail around every part of those viruses and how they are affected with honeybees and Varroa. Tamara, did you want to share some information around that previous question?
Yeah, sorry, Bianca. And just for everyone's information, I'm not usually a beekeeper, and so I'm very much coming up to speed in this role. So if you do have questions about beekeeper registration generally, you could refer to DPI's beekeeper registration line, but I understand that beekeeper registrations are a 2-year, have a 2-year limitation these days. I think I saw that pop up in the chat a little bit earlier, but I was just trying to find that question again, Bianca, and there are so many questions, which I'm grateful
There's
for.
quite a lot. We probably aren't going to have
heaps.
the ability to get all of the questions answered live, but we have answered them in the Q&A. So if people are looking through that, they'll be able to see a lot of those answers. Some of them that haven't been addressed are still here as open.
Sorry, Bianca, it is actually, yeah. So it's a 2-year validation, and there has been a link put into the chat around how that works, and that number 026 552 3000 for anyone that does have questions around that New South Wales hive registration.
Fantastic. I might cross to Julie. I've got a query here about how do we reach out and train those that are not registered? Maybe this is a combined effort between Julie and Tamara to cover that in terms of how do we actually ensure that we reach them. I know we talked about being in a bee club, making sure that you are receiving information through that channel. But if you're not a registered beekeeper and you have bees, you should be a registered beekeeper, yes. Essentially. So I guess we're providing industry updates to registered beekeepers across the public information team for the response. Is there another way that beekeepers can be informed? Is it mainly around being part of a club or an association?
Well, and keeping your eye on, oh, sorry, Tamara, you go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, look, we're trying to get the messaging out around this as broad as possible. So Facebook has been, like all of the social media outlets have been used to try and spread the messaging around these training opportunities and the video opportunities as well. So if anyone has any ideas for channels, we are using ARBIC channels. We're going out through each of the jurisdictions. But if anyone has any other ideas, happy to take them on board, because we tend to find that sometimes people are not that technically literate or interested, and trying to reach those people has been a bit difficult for us.
And just keep your eye out too on, it'll be published on all sorts of different places. So keep an eye out and talk to your beekeeping friends, because they might be more up to date than you and able to let you know that what's going on if you can't find that yourself. But as I mentioned as well, you can complete the expression of interest form or you can reach out through, there's a hotline number as well that people can ring and ask that question as well if you'd rather speak to someone.
That's right. Yes, the 1800 084 881. It's plastered all over the New South Wales DPI Varroa page. I also just, Julie, while I've got you in the hot seat again, can you explain the context of the resources and how we've utilised both technical specialists here in Australia, but also lent on experience from overseas to develop the content with best management overseas, but also the limitations we have, not knowing Varroa's roll out across the country and how we exactly deal with it. So we've had a bit of intervention from our technical specialist in New South Wales DPI, Elizabeth Frost.
Yes.
Can you describe a little bit about the methods you've used to coordinate the information for the training? We've lent on New Zealand for this response from the beginning. Yes, that's right. So there's been a lot of input from a range of people who've had all sorts of experiences, both within Australia and overseas, with managing Varroa mite, including Emily, who's on the line at the moment, who's had some input into that as well. So we're definitely trying to draw on that knowledge that already exists on how to do this, but look at how that operates within the Australian context. So definitely a lot of consultation has happened, but will continue to happen as well. And we've actually got some people directly reaching out to us as well who want to, who are from other countries that have had a lot of experience in this as well. And they are actually reaching out to us and asking how can they be involved and help too. So we'll definitely take up those opportunities as they come as well. Yeah, excellent. We've been getting that too. And I think it's really important to realise that we can lean on each other, both within Australia and within our friendships outside of us overseas. I just wanted to address one of the questions myself, which is that, look, the information on the slides will be provided as a recorded webinar through ARBIC's YouTube channel, and it'll be shared out across the New South Wales DPI. For some of the specifics, someone's asked for, don't make us do screenshots. If you're looking at the Varroa life cycle that was provided in my particular webinar presentation, you'll be able to find that at the Bayer website, bayer.com. It's actually a PDF that they supplied years ago around Varroa, and there's lots more information on that. I'm just following through on a couple more of the questions. Got a couple open. Tamara, I might just push this one across to you, which is, what have we learned from the eradication process? And can you give us a bit of information about how the plant pest deed works in terms of reviewing and after action review for the response?
Yeah, thanks, Bianca. There was actually an after action review done today in Orange for the people that were involved, or some of the people that were involved in the initial response to Varroa for the eradication project. And definitely there's a monitoring and evaluation process that occurs after each of these events. Look, none of us were more disappointed that we lost Varroa than those staff that worked on the response. I was one of those, and it was devastating. So certainly we look at each of these, and definitely we're looking very closely at this one to understand how we lost control, and what more we could have done. And we're also doing a lot of follow-up as well in terms of entomology and testing to try and understand exactly how that Varroa spread without us sort of finding it for a period of time, and understanding more about that, how it got here in the first place. So certainly we are looking very closely at those issues.
Yeah, and look, they also feed into other plant pest responses. So there's a range of ways that information being reviewed can impact the future, not just for our honeybee industry, but all plant industries. We've got a couple of queries that I'll probably address, which is ARBIC would like to just make sure that beekeepers understand that through our member bodies, we are coordinating information to help us look at the national honey levies and to implement particular changes to the levies. This kind of information can be coordinated via the the state conferences this year, and how we're going to pay down our share of the Varroa response, which is about 1.1% of the full $100 million capped amount. So I hope that addresses your query. There's a really important one there. Like I haven't got, we've got some queries around thresholds. At the moment in New South Wales, there isn't currently a control order that expects beekeepers to adhere to threshold limits, but the best advice we can give, and I hope, Julie, I'm sure you'll agree, we've got a lot of Varroa mite prime facts that have been developed specifically for the T2M that are still available and will continue to be available and updated through the New South Wales DPI website that identify brood phases and appropriate threshold numbers that beekeepers can use. And if they're querying that, I suppose, as well, in terms of what ARBIC and the VDOs can supply, get in contact with the VDO if you're querying those thresholds and whether you need to implement a treatment or an intervention of some sort to manage levels of Varroa. We've got a few queries in here that relate around chemical treatments being available. Did you have any details, Tamara, around DPI's processes at the moment? Any updates to the chemical availability?
Not really, Bianca, only to say that we are working actively with the AVPMA to try and fast track some of the processes for getting formal approval for a wider variety of chemical treatments. Yesterday, we secured an extension to Apitraz as a means of temporary treatment until we can establish and get that longer term approval for those chemicals, but we're on a daily basis continuing to work with AVPMA to try and broaden the range available. Things I think I saw mentioned in the chat of oxalic acid, and that's one of the ones that we are looking at trying to get through AVPMA. But as you're aware, we've got some really high standards in Australia, and we certainly advocate that they are maintained as high. So we do want to make sure that the treatments we're using are safe in our climate, which is different to the climates that are currently dealing with Varroa overseas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, ARBIC's been petitioning quite hard to the APVMA through the department to be able to acknowledge that we do need a range of different chemicals available, but they also are limited in their efficacy. So I think we might take some of those questions around the chemical options on notice to maybe address some of those. And look, if you attend a Varroa workshop, you're going to receive lots of other information around what's available. And it doesn't just limit beekeepers to chemical interventions. There is a query here around what other interventions are we doing? We've had lots of research into different control methods. Julie touched on integrated pest management as one of the key components of the workshop training. There are multiple different methods to manage Varroa, and I think the lesson here in all of this information this evening is really just to point beekeepers in the right direction, that the people employed under this T2M program are the key people that have been identified that really want to provide the honeybee industry with assistance moving forward in a new normal. So make sure that if you have bees and you're interested in the training, that you are registered in your state. And that you keep up to date on the New South Wales DPI website for information about Varroa. Make sure that you join your bee club or association branch closest to you to continue to learn. We'll be looking at putting all of, as Julie mentioned, the training is going to be rolled out across the other states and the rest of New South Wales over the next few months. And we're really excited to be able to provide that level of information to industry. And I think leaning back on experiences that I've had in New Zealand with beekeepers that took up the education and training rollout over there, it was paramount to them succeeding as a country to live with Varroa, and it does soften the impact. And there won't be no impacts, but we just have to seek that information from the right places when we need it. I think we've probably covered most of the things we can in this particular session, and there will be some queries that potentially we can cover in the next webinar. And if we don't do that, I'm very, very confident that we will be able to put some information through to the industry, either through ARBIC or through the public information team of the response. So I suppose it's been lovely to listen to the answers, to have the presentations available to the industry. And I'd really like to take this opportunity to give a huge thanks to the team behind the scenes, Joanne Cumming, Ellie McNamara, Lloyd Kingham, Sheila Stokes, Dave Fairhall, Emily Nordyke and Danny Lefebvre, and the public information team in general that have helped to put this webinar together. And our presenters, Tamara and Julie, thank you very much. And of course, to our audience, our community of beekeepers across Australia, thank you for visiting the webinar this evening. And it's been recorded and will be available in the coming days, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for information. Have a lovely evening.